Ms. He, the shocking images coming from Aleppo reminds us there is still very brutal war going on in Syria. Over 500,000 people have been killed and even millions have become refugees. Do you think the timing of Russians and Americans sitting together and having negotiations will bring an end to the hostilities in Syria this time?
Well, I'm not so optimistic at all, because similar the talk like this, I think, has been taken place before. So this is not the first time. Of course, this is not the last time. So I think only by this single talk itself, I don't think it will totally bring the end of this civil war. Even the Russian foreign minister and also the John Kerry, both those leading negotiators themselves, they hasn't given such very optimistic tone either. They are saying even the comprehensive treaty itself now cannot be announced yet. So there still leave a lot of technical issue will be left for those expertise to have further negotiate or discuss. They are just saying some progress has been made. So even themselves haven't given us.
So are Russians and Americans serious about negotiations this time? Mr. Matuzov, your take first.
Well, I think that twice Kerry and Lavrov were in marathon, 13 hours, 12 hours. They were talking, but they know they issued any common point, common ground, common declaration. I think that means that Russia and the United States has a principal differences in approach to way how to solve Syrian crisis. I think that America till now is supporting idea that Bashar Assad is illegal, that he should go out, and changing regime by those who are representing, on their view, opposition forces that will only have legal status. I think that position is not right, at least, and till America doesn't regard of these principles of her approach, I don't think that any real progress will be achieved in negotiations on the level of two countries, the United States and Russia.
Mr. Crowley, why this time around Americans and Russians have more reasons to come to any kind of agreement?
I think what they were talking about on Friday was not a comprehensive solution, as all of my colleagues have said. There's still this fundamental divide between the United States, Russia, and other parties to the conflict over the future of the Assad regime. The dilemma for the United States is that there's no formula presently to end the conflict. The dilemma for Russia is that there's no path forward for the Assad regime to resume its control of Syria that it had, say, 5 years ago. But I do think that there's value in discussions about interim steps. Can you achieve a ceasefire in large sections of Syria so that you can deliver humanitarian assistance to those who need it? Can you reach an understanding as to attacking the Islamic State, defeating the caliphate there, and at the same time reducing the leverage that a powerful group like the al-Nusra Front poses, and the challenge it poses to the future of the country. So I think there's the potential for some sort of interim constructive steps, but as I think the three of us all agree, the United States and Russia, as two parties of a multi-sided conflict, still do not have an agreement fundamentally on the future of Syria and how it should be governed.
And you just mentioned there are still fundamental differences between Russians and Americans. For example, they have different definitions of what is terrorist groups. How can they overcome those difficulties and put those forces that they think they are in control to stop hostilities at this particular time? Mr. Crowley?
I think we have to be very cautious here because you can easily identify 10 sides to this conflict. Russia has an interest, the United States has an interest, but you have a wide variety of actors inside Syria, all of whom define this conflict differently and define potential solutions differently. As we've seen emerge in recent days, you have a conflict between the dynamic inside of Syria, for example, with Kurdish interests in having an autonomous region as the Iraqi Kurds do next door. And you have an indication that kind of increase in the leverage that the Kurds have within Syria is of great concern to Turkey. And as we sit here, it appears that Turkish and Kurdish forces are now in conflict within Syria. So I think you have a significant interest by Russia and the United States, but we have to be realistic that there's a limit to what these two countries by themselves can achieve.
We'll talk about Turkey later on. Mr. Matuzov, what do you think is the biggest challenges for Russia to really have a substantial agreement? Do you think Bashar's government will stop at launching attacks on the rebel forces?
Russia doesn't care about the future of Bashar Assad of Syrian regime because Russian position is absolutely clear from the very beginning of the Syrian crisis that all future of Syrian people should decided by Syrian population, Syrian people. And the question is how to arrange them, this opportunity. But not, we reject absolutely clear any efforts to change regime, change presidents from outside. Any orders for Bashar Assad to go out and the regime has fallen is unacceptable principally. I think that now on this stage it's very important to stop fighting. Stop fighting, Russia suggested many times and it demanded from all sides.
But why do you think this fighting hasn't stopped yet? Because there are several rounds of negotiations already, but it seems that fighting is still going on the ground in Syria.
Because all groups, militarized groups in Syria who are supported by the United States, not all of them, but mainly these groups are rejecting ceasefire and demanding prolonging fight against Syrian regime. And they don't consider that final future for Syria without Bashar Assad should be decided right now. And in this connection, I can say that American behavior in Syria is not right, because they sent their troops, their specialists, their experts to Kurdish region that was considered as an ally of Syrian regime. After arrival of American experts, all these Kurdish groups, militarized groups, were open fighting against Syrian regime. Why? Because they want to change this regime by military ways. I think that should be absolutely clear for all there is no military solution in Syria. And for this basic point should regard and they take any position. Now we confront Turkish forces with Kurdish forces supported by the United States. Where is the policy of the United States in this case? I think it is strategical question to find solution, peace or war. If it is war, against whom? Groups that is considered terroristic on the military. I think that it is question now under discussion.
It seems there are a lot of
Kerry and Lavrov will find as soon as possible common ground.
Which are the terror groups and what kind of a political future for Syria. Do they have strong incentives, Americans and Russians, Bashar and the opposition, to sit down and really have serious talks?
Well, I think nowadays the situation on the ground is more complicated than before. There are not only two major players, that is Russia and the United States. Now there are many regional players now all jumped in this game. For example,
considering Turkey, just
like Turkey, last week
inside.
they sent the troops all the way inside of the Syria territory. And also Iran has been offered the military base for the Russia. Their airplane to use. So that's also very first time, even before the Islamic Revolution. And then at that time, the Iran pro-US government hasn't offered this military base for United States to use. So this is a very key thing. I think that's one of the driving force for the United States now eager to have a settlement about Syria crisis with Russia. So I think among all of that, one key fundamental reason for these conflicts becoming prolonged so many years, that is they cannot reach a consensus about who is the terrorist group, who is the moderate, those opposition forces. So those two, like extremist forces, rebel forces, and moderate, those opposition forces, they are intermingling with each other. They are also, take their activity based same area. So
what do you think can change their minds about forgetting definitions of terrorist groups, focusing on having a ceasefire and have a political negotiation?
Well, it's quite hard. If you really take like Syria people's interests as the priority, and then you drop all your own national interests just behind, maybe that's the time you can reach some real consensus. But now those ceasefire, when they have been shunned, there is a loophole there. They are saying, all right, all those like two parties, government forces and the rebel forces, you should be ceasefire, but accept those air strikes towards those terrorist group. That's exception from those ceasefire. So the Russian supported airstrikes together with Syria governments, those military attack, they're also saying in the name of anti-terror. And then they have targeted, sometimes by wrong targeting or by any other reasons for some bases, even supported by US and by European those countries. And then that's why now the two leading players, they're talking about share the intelligence information. At least you are not targeting the bases I supported. So nowadays, all those
So do you think the Russians and Americans can this time really share intelligence and on the same page about what targets they should aim at?
But those shared intelligence only relevant with those intelligence matters with their own interests, so not for others.
Let's talk about Turkey's role in this. Turkey recently launched an offensive into Syria, fighting ISIL and also Kurds forces within Syria. What is Americans' stance on this, Mr. Crowley? It seems both the Kurds forces in Syria and the Turkey are both American allies, or should I say proxies.
Well, the United States and Turkey are allies as part of NATO. And the United States has been supporting, among other groups, the Kurdish forces in Syria that have focused their attention on taking back territory from the Islamic State. And in fact, they have been, very effective recently in doing that. At the same time as we've seen the liberation of some villages in Syria, Manbij and others. There is concern by the United States as well over the positioning of these forces. The United States is very concerned about this clash that seems to be emerging between Turkish forces and Kurdish forces, and has openly encouraged both sides to try to stabilize situation and focus their energy on the Islamic State, not on each other. But this is part of the inherent complexity, within Turkey. I agree with my colleagues that the future of Syria should be up to the Syrian people. Now, the problem is that various communities, whether Sunnis, Shia, so-called moderates, the more extreme forces, they all have a zero-sum calculation on the future of the country. And I agree with Mr. Matuzov that we need a political solution, but the reality is that the dynamic on the ground in Syria probably does not yet promote the kind of political negotiation that everyone desires. But ultimately, the conflict is not going to end until the combatants have confidence that a process will lead to a genuine change in how Syria is governed.
Have Americans lived up to their commitments of stop aiding Kurdish forces if they do not pull out of the west of Euphrates, as you promised? That's the complaints from Turkey.
Well, we'll see. On the one hand, there is indications that the military forces have pulled back across to the east of the Euphrates. At the same time, there are allies of the Kurds who remain. I think from the United States standpoint, what you really need here is, as you take back territory from the Islamic State, it has to be effectively held. And that's the question. Is ultimately, as you're able to defeat the Islamic State, what forces are going to move in to fill that vacuum? That is obviously a major part of the discussion that's ongoing, between Russia and the United States and others over how to do that.
And Mr. Matuzov, do you think Turkey's recent military operation into Syria has anything to do with the rapprochement between Ankara and Moscow?
We don't know any official position on this ground except declaration of Russian and Syrian foreign ministers, because they are not supporting military intervention from Turkey to Syria. But I draw your attention the common ground for Turkey, Syria, Iraq and Iran in this connection, because all four countries in this area are against independent Kurdish state. And we consider that Kurdish ally of Syrian government that now are under ego of American military forces, that means party of Kurdish Union, is trying to spread their influence on Manbij, on Jerusalem, and then to the Mediterranean. And by this step, by this project, they are in intention, and obviously, it is intention to proclaim independent state. If so, Russia and the United States should take a common ground, common position on these prospects.
All right.
If they support aspirations of Kurdish people or not in this connection. Russia consider it is not the right, and from this position, Russia's not approved Turkish move, but not against it openly. And Syrian government also opposing any establishing Kurdish government on their territory. Kurdish groups, military groups, failed to conquer and to fight Syrian army.
Mr. Matuzov.
And in spite of the fact
Ms.
that
Hood,
they
do you think
captured
this round of ceasefire negotiations
a city was
hold,
controlled
and
by
for
Syrian
how long?
army.
And do you think
under
Turkey's
the pressure of Kurdish
military
group,
operations will
Syrian
last
army
long? Or it
has
will,
right to withdraw.
wind up very soon?
Well, this ceasefire has been on and off for many times. So I don't think this new round of talk between Russia and the US now can endure a very long ceasefire. You know, those military attacking happened almost every day on the ground in Syria. Now, even with this complicated situation, I mean, more regional players now jumping into the game. So even the US and Russia now, they cannot fully control all of those players. Even those regional players, I mean, in the government level, all those big or small, those rebel forces, some are even declare their emergence just with a new group. So they have been many. So they're out of the control. So even you have reached some truce in the office, like in Geneva, and then those, those orders cannot be implemented to the frontier
so
in
enforcement
Syria.
is a problem. You are
Yes.
not optimistic at all.
Yeah, I'm not
What about
optimistic
Turkish
at all.
military operation? Will they last?
Turkish military action is a very interesting thing. I think they follow that tango, the wave, like if the closer with the Russia or closer with the U.S. So when they trying to keep some distance, like with U.S., maybe they will do something to plead the Russia.
Okay.
So when they want to keep distance with Russia, maybe they do something to plead
It's a very
the
hard,
U.S.
It
So
is a very
it's play
hard
the game right
balancing
now.
act.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.